Always the goal.
That's today's goal.
Let's be real.
So again, before we get into this, like I mentioned, Sadie and I have done this webinar. I think this is the third year that we've done this exact webinar, Second with You and I together. And this year is an extremely different year. And I hate to even say it, but because I'm getting tired of talking about it, but COVID-19 has done a tremendous amount to affect our people, to affect our industry, but we're starting to actually see the ripple effects of COVID-19 and how it actually is going to affect cancer.
Yeah.
And obviously there's no proof that shows that COVID-19 causes cancer. However, what you are going to see is through 2020, many individuals delayed their normal screenings, delayed their checkup appointments, delayed their annual appointments because of COVID-19. And unfortunately, what you're going to see as a result of that is you're going to see more cancer diagnosis and more late-term cancer diagnosis because they weren't able to get in there in the past year to have their normal screenings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something to keep in mind. Again, that's something, as we know, a lot of we talk about our own cancer stories. That was like an example I talked about in this morning session with my own mom. She, a couple years ago, got a cancer screening. 3 months later, they found out she had precancerous cells. If she would have had that in 2020, she wouldn't have been able to go to her appointment. We would be having a very different conversation now.
Yep.
So again, COVID-19 is a perfect time to have these conversations with your clients about their potentials of getting cancer, because I do believe you're going to see an increased amount of individuals who unfortunately are diagnosed with cancer due to lack of screening during COVID-19. So before we get in too deep, let's go ahead and talk about why cancer insurance. Why are we passionate about cancer insurance, but why your client should be interested in cancer insurance? First of all, cancer is an extremely emotional, and I would say a family disease.
For sure.
It is one, again, thanks to what modern media has done, thanks to the American Red Cross, thanks to the American Cancer Society, thanks to the cancer ribbons, media, all the 5Ks. Cancer used to be a very taboo conversation. If somebody was sick with cancer, you didn't ask about it, you didn't talk about it. Now it's become a very, I would say, a tribal disease. Yeah. Whenever somebody gets diagnosed with cancer, they typically find out who their tribe is, so to speak. And so it is extremely emotional. It is one that we talk about everybody having a cancer story. Everybody can relate to a cancer story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, with that being a very emotional disease, keep in mind that that people are going to have cancer stories. We talk about the statistics. It's now 1/3 of women, and you mentioned earlier, it's now 1/3 of men.
Yeah.
It used to be 1/2.
That statistic just updated last year, so it has dropped just a little bit, went from being 1 in 2 men, now it's 1 in 3 men, which is progress. And I think that that probably ties into the whole media. There's just a lot more awareness, a lot more funding, donations, all that sort of stuff, and research. But again, 1 in 3 people, which means if you haven't been diagnosed with cancer, then you know someone who has been. So
everybody has a story. Everybody can share a story, personal, themselves, a neighbor, a loved one. Everybody will have a story with cancer. So if everybody can, what's the word I'm looking for? Whenever you can, like, everybody can relate to a cancer story. Now, interestingly enough, the majority of costs associated with cancer are non-medical, which explains why cancer is the #1 cause of medical bankruptcy in the United States. They estimate between 60 and 70, different sources will give you different numbers, but between 60 and 70% of costs associated with cancer are going to be non-medical. So that's going to include things like travel, gas in your car, airline tickets, hotel room stays. The biggest example that I can give of that, again, is my personal story. My father was actually diagnosed with cancer back in 2001. Me and my sister were very young. When he was diagnosed with that cancer, my childhood is a product of someone having a cancer insurance policy. So obviously he was still working. We were farmers at the time, but what a cancer policy meant for him was that when he was going back and forth receiving chemo, we were about 2 hours away from our nearest cancer center. He had to get 5 rounds of chemo per week for like a 5-week period. you're not going to drive back and forth after receiving chemo from yourself to the facility. So they got a hotel room stays whenever when he would have procedures and things like that done and would have extended stays in a hospital. Mom would be able to pay for a hotel room while he was in the hospital. They had food that they had to eat out. Mom had to take time off of her work. They had to pay money to have myself and my sister with babysitters and things like that. So the majority of those costs, again, were not covered by medical insurance.
Right. And you have to think, whenever you're diagnosed with cancer, treatment starts right away. That's not something that you push off. So think about all the costs that you would have if suddenly you have a loss of income, maybe 2 if you and your spouse are having to not work. Think of all the different expenses that you'd have to find some sort of fund for that aren't medical related. Even things like whenever people go through chemo, their hair, they lose it. Wigs are going to be emotionally important.
Right.
To people who feel like they're losing part of their dignity because they're losing their hair. Things like that, that you don't think of before you're in that situation, which there's going to be a lot of. These kind of plans help cover that.
Now, what's really interesting is that not only are costs not going to be covered that are non-medical, but a lot of your prescription and treatment plans offered are not actually going to be covered by Medicare either. The biggest thing that I say, again, that affected with my family and the journey that we went through was actually anti-nausea and insomnia medications, sleep medications, because they were what's the word I'm looking for? They were side effects of the chemotherapy and the radiation treatment. Interesting enough, Medicare will only pay for anti-nausea medications via injectable within 2 hours after receiving chemotherapy treatment. So again, if you're somebody who's receiving that anti-nausea medication after the fact, oftentimes Medicare is not going to cover that. Same thing with the insomnia medication, because in their mind, it's not medically necessary, even though it is prescribed.
Right.
You're also talking about things like vitamin C therapy, sun therapy, any type of holistic Eastern medicine type things that, again, people can say, well, of course that's not covered, that doesn't work. If you or a loved one's diagnosed with cancer, you're willing to do and try anything to prolong or better their life.
Absolutely.
So no treatment is off the table.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And then last but not least, we know this, but Medicare, even looking at the stuff that Medicare supplements and Medicare plans will cover, there are some pretty significant shortcomings to that. And that's exactly what this slide is. According to the Journal of American Medicine Association, the oncology report, that is a mouthful. JAMA.
That's why
JAMA sounds a lot more fun. Yeah. Like it sounds like it's a party.
JAMA.
According to JAMA, back in the course, this was looking at cancer patients of the median age of 73. This is this is what you can expect to pay if you get diagnosed with cancer based on the type of insurance that you have. So that's obviously an average out of pocket of just under $5,600. But again, even your almighty Medicare supplements are going to have pretty significant out-of-pockets. Medicare Advantage, most notably, is going to be the chemotherapy. Medicare Advantage plans reported that the quickest way for someone to reach their maximum out-of-pocket was actually through chemotherapy medications. Most individuals or most Medicare Advantage plans will have them pay a 20% copay because they don't cover anything in addition to what original Medicare covers, which is that 20% copay. So, and Brian mentioned, he goes, man, it got dark here really quick. I mean, we are talking about cancer insurance. I'll let you know, Brian, when the Unicorn and Rainbow webinar is next. I'll make sure you get a personal invite. But it's important information. I don't want to make light of a serious situation, but I want to make sure that we really drove home why. Why cancer insurance? Why does somebody need to have a cancer insurance policy on top of a Plan F Medicare supplement? So any questions about why? Any questions about why an individual who may be perfectly healthy may be interested in purchasing a cancer insurance plan? While you guys are typing away furiously, I'm going to go ahead and describe the 2 different types of cancer insurance policies. There are multiple. We stick with the top 2. Number 1 is a pay-per-service one. That is one like familiar with Equitable for those who were selling Equitable back in the early 2010s. It's pay-per-services. Basically how they work is that for every time you stay in a hotel, every time you receive a chemotherapy treatment, every time you have a list of things that it covers, you submit a claim for that and you get a check in the mail from that insurance carrier. It is an indemnity style plan, so they pay you, they don't pay the provider, which is great. I like indemnity style plans. The reason pros of that is that there is a time limit, but there is no max on how much benefit a person can get. So they'll basically say we'll pay benefits for 5 years. Within that 5-year benefit, you can get $25,000, you can get $150,000. There's no max amount of money that you can get from one of those plans. The downside, though, a lot of paperwork.
A lot of paperwork.
It is a lot of paperwork.
A lot to keep track of. And you have to think of the emotional toll that that can take on you. Whenever you're trying to get better from cancer or you're helping your loved one get better from cancer, the last thing that you need is to be worrying about, well, did I keep track of this receipt? Did I do this? Where is this at? Have we done this? And that's sort of what comes with the pay per service. This could work for some people, but that emotional toll can take a lot. And if you're not emotionally doing well, that can have a big effect. We've seen that from this past year in nursing homes, that your emotional well-being has a lot to do with your health as well.
Oh, so true.
That can have you have to consider that whenever you're considering these two different styles.
The second style, and I think one that Sadie and I agree with, is the way that we prefer to go, is the lump sum plan. Basically, if an individual gets diagnosed with cancer, they submit the claim to the insurance carrier, basically with their diagnosis, and that carrier gives them a lump sum of money. We see really anywhere from about $5,000 all the way up to $100,000 that they get with a diagnosis of cancer. Pros of that, obviously the exact opposite of a paper service. It's one claim and you're done. You use that money how you see fit. So you don't have to track your miles traveled. Don't have to track your hotel room stays. You use that money. For example, I'll give it with, again, my dad. He had a lump sum benefit. And whenever, they kind of decided that they were going to stop treatment, he was able to use the remainder of his benefits to purchase an airplane and take pilot license and get his pilot's license. So that was something that he was able to make sure set up funds for my sister and I for schooling, things like that. So he was able to use that money not just for his treatment, but again to take care of his life or the remaining of his life holistically. Cons of a lump sum is that once it's used, it's gone. It doesn't matter if you're fighting your cancer for 1 year or 10 years. Once that benefit runs out, there's no way to get it back. There is something called a restoration of benefits. Carriers we'll talk about do have riders for that. But in order for that restoration of benefit rider to work, you have to stop and not actually have a diagnostic cancer or not be diagnosed with cancer, be in that remission for at least a year for those to even start. So once it's done, it's done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and we'll give a recommendation of what carriers we recommend here in a second, but I want to go ahead and get to the part where most people, once they understand the why, they understand how it works, this is where a lot of people get hung up, is how do I bring up the topic of cancer? Because it's the elephant in the room.
Right.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The best way to bring up the topic of cancer is to just bring up the topic of cancer. There was actually 2 ways we talk about an agency who I got to work with for a very long time, extremely successful when it came to writing cancer insurance. We asked him, how did you do it? Please tell me word for word your transitional phrase. We'll start saying it. And he just said, all I do is before I even get to the fact-finding portion of my appointment, before I ask them a single question about their situation, he goes, I always say, no matter what you decide today, no matter what path we decide to go down, do not drop your cancer benefit. And he says 9 out of 10 people would say, okay, well, you mean my health insurance, my Medicare supplement, No, I don't mean your health insurance. I'm talking about your cancer benefit. You have an option to have an extra policy that if you get diagnosed with cancer, you get a check in the mail for however much money you want. And that was enough when you create that urgency that says no matter what else we do, don't do that. That was enough for them to understand that this is a conversation they needed to have with their clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dan Mangus also had the Post-it approach. I know we talked about that earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. So they have, was it on the packet? Oh, I forgot how it went.
It was on the folder.
On the folder.
Would give to his clients.
Here we go. Yeah. He'd say, don't forget to bring up cancer policy. So that way it kind of seemed real nonchalant, not a big deal, sort of just like as a reminder, and then it would remind both of them to bring up that policy. It would kind of start the conversation really organically.
Yeah. So it was just basically like the least way or the least fluid way of bringing it up, you just bring it up.
Sure.
Now, if you do want a little bit more finesse, you want to have a little bit more style in it, I like to do run appointments like a doctor's office. I model a lot of the way that I do appointments based on how a doctor's office treats me. And so I really like the idea of when you're doing your fact-finding process, all cross-selling happens in the fact-finding portion of your appointment. So asking questions of things like, tell me your family history of cancer. Is that a concern that you have? Tell me, do you or a loved one, have you been in a situation with somebody that you were experiencing them going through a cancer crisis? Tell me that story. Now, here's what I love about that method, is that it is a very open-ended question. When we're doing fact finding, we don't want to say yes or no. We want to keep them very open. And that is because stories sell. Get your client to tell a story about cancer. Cancer in general is, again, we've said it so many times today, is a very emotional sell. It's a very emotional product. So when you get them to tell a story, it makes it real. It takes it from this hypothetical situation. It puts them in that area, and it does evoke that emotion.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to open the door by telling your own story. Again, everybody has their own story. So you can get them comfortable and allow them to feel the freedom to be a little more vulnerable in that fact-finding process if you're telling them stories of your personal cancer stories. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I like that. I like how you said that. It allows them, when you become a little more vulnerable, it makes it a conversation.
Right.
It's not you trying to sell them. It makes it very conversational. So get them to share their experiences, get them to share their stories. One mistake I see, and again, this is for all cross-selling, but particularly with cancer insurance, is that people get really worried because they think that the policies are complicated. They're anxious about having to talk about, well, how do I sell a cancer policy? And they focus really hard on the features. Selling a cancer policy should take about 10 seconds. That might be a little dramatic. Realistically, about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You're showing the benefits of owning a cancer plan. Why? We always talk about the you can relax knowing presentation. My clients can relax knowing that if they get diagnosed with cancer, they're not having to figure out how they're going to pay for their treatments or pay for their stays. They can spend all of their energy focusing on their improvement and getting better. And so why else? That's why you want a cancer policy. You explain to them, 60 to 70% of costs are non-medical. Everything that we talked about one slide ago, make sure they're educated. Make sure they're educated on the true risk, the true financial risk of cancer.
Yeah.
You don't have to go line by line on a cancer insurance policy to sell it. In fact, you won't sell it. You'll overcomplicate it.
That's the thing about cancer. It's just all about educating them.
Mm-hmm.
In a sort of similar way that DVH is, it's an easy sell because people can understand it. But the thing is with DVH, you don't really have to explain it. Or with cancer, after you explain it, it's very easy to be like, oh yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Yeah. And people also might not be aware of those. So that's why you just got to bring it up. They might not be aware. Just educate them on it.
Exactly. Last but not least, and this is the biggest mistake I see insurance agents make when it comes to cancer insurance, is that they sell based on a fear tactic. And it's understandable. I don't think anybody's doing this maliciously, but it's understandable because the statistics are scary. 1 in 3 people will get diagnosed with cancer, and it's the #1 cause of medical bankruptcy. I mean, that's scary.
Right.
And so what this does, and what I'm telling people is that making sure, and I understand why, fear is a very powerful emotion. It is a very motivational emotion. However, fear is also very temporary. Whenever you remove the source of fear, then the emotions kind of cut down, logic takes back over, and that seems, again, when you're selling based on fear, you're really underselling the value of a cancer insurance policy. And that's when you're going to see high cancellations of these types of policies, which is not great because it hurts your reputation, hurts your retention, and commission paybacks are never fun. Yeah. Commission chargebacks aren't fun. So what we're talking about is using emotion, because people buy using their emotion. They justify that purchase with logic, but making sure, again, you're evoking the right feelings. You want to evoke the feeling of security in owning a cancer plan, not the fear of what if I don't.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So Michael asked a great question about incentive benefits, and we'll talk about that here in a second, Michael. Some carriers cover it and some carriers don't. The ones that we recommend typically do. So Michael, hang tight. I'm glad that you asked that question. Most people don't even know to ask it. So great call. Sadie and I focus on cross-selling cancer insurance, but cancer insurance is also an incredible product to prospect with, an incredible product to get new clients with, because it's pretty self-explanatory. Cancer is such a buzzword, again, thanks to the media, the ribbons, the certain cancer awareness months. It's become a topic that people are very interested in having a conversation about. So compared to a product like many other products out there, cancer insurance is an incredible one to promote and prospect with. A million events to sponsor your 5Ks, the American Cancer Society, sponsor different types of walks, different silent auctions, partner with your local, we have the Ellis Fitzgerald, which is our local cancer center. Partner with them. They do a million fundraising events a year. Get involved in the community. The great part about getting involved with your community means that you can publish your involvement on social media and do what we call the humble brag, which is to show everybody that, like, I'm a good person. Look at me help with these events. And I mean, honestly, you're doing good in the process. You're getting money to some great causes.
Right. Yeah.
Next is mailers to current clients. Senior Marketing Specialist has something called the AMP program, Agent Marketing Portfolio. And there we have things like newsletters and things like that, but we also have mailers, postcards, letters, we have door hangers, we have anything that you could possibly need in order to promote these products to your current book of business. These pieces aren't great for prospecting, but they're amazing to sell to your current book of business. It helps get your name out there. These are editable for your name, logo, headshot. So it helps build familiarity with your agency, helps keep you in front of your clientele, but also allows your clientele to know that you sell cancer insurance.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's one of the 7 contacts a year. So that's one contact, but it's a very non-confrontational way to tell your clients this is something that I offer, and kind of gets the wheels turning there. Gears turning. Gears.
There's a hamster on a wheel on here. I promise you that. He's tired a lot of the time. But something else I'll mention with that, and you mentioned it's just a really nonchalant or really casual way to let your clients know you offer it, because there are 2 things, especially when it comes to cancer insurance, you don't want to hear from your clients. One is, oh, I didn't know you offered cancer insurance, so I called the 1-800 number, or an agent called me and I talked to them about it. You never want to have that conversation because you never told your client you offered it. But number 2, you never want to be told from a client that it's too late. And we bring up the story, Dan Mangas, who is the Vice President of Sales here at Senior Marketing Specialist, talks about a client that he had for years, went to his office one day, sat down and said, Dan, you told me that you were always going to take care of me. He goes, I am. I always, you're one of my clients. Of course I'm taking care of you. She said, well, do you have any cancer insurance policies? And he goes, absolutely. And he started pulling up brochures to show her. And she said, Dan, it's too late. I was diagnosed with cancer last week, and today I'm moving in with my daughter because I can't afford to stay in my own home. And she pointed her finger at him and said, shame on you. Shame on you. And that's not something that you're going to easily forget. That's a very hard lesson to learn.
He still talks about it.
I mean, he gets very emotional talking about it. That's a hard lesson to learn.
For sure.
So making sure that you are presenting that product, and even if they say no, at least they know it's an option that you offer.
Yeah.
Social media, we've talked about this a little bit with sponsoring events. Social media, the biggest thing I'll say here is you're not selling cancer insurance. Don't say, hey, I can get you a $50,000 benefit for $30 a month. Don't do that, because that is annoying. That is selling. Social media, you don't sell. But making sure your clients are aware of the statistics, aware of the risk, and aware of resources to help them with determining their risks of cancer or how to avoid cancer, things like that.
Yeah, it works in the same way that mailers do. It's just another non-confrontational way just to get it out in front of them on an everyday basis. They're just scrolling through their feed and see something about cancer insurance so that they know it's an option.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then last but not least, a little different right now thanks to COVID-19, but because seminars, again, we're going to mention that in anybody's marketing plan, marketing strategy, they're the best way to deliver information on a mass basis while allowing you to build a network, allowing you to network with other individuals, and allowing you to be perceived as an expert in your field.
Yeah, absolutely. If cancer is all about educating them on the risk, obviously seminars are going to be a really good option for you to get that out, because that's what seminars are. You're educating them. And again, it's on a big basis. You're talking to a bunch of people and having that face-to-face contact as well. It's another non-confrontational way because you're not sitting down one-on-one, but you're still having that face-to-face contact over a pretty sensitive subject.
Well, and they chose to be there.
Right.
I mean, it was their option. You know, they chose this. Yeah. Just like all of you chose to sit down and listen to Sadie and I talk about cancer insurance. That's how your potential prospects will feel. They chose this.
I'm sure that your clients will enjoy it just as much as you all are enjoying us right now.
I have no doubt. We're going to go ahead and cover really briefly about what companies we recommend, specifically because we are doing this for all 50 states. So some of these may be in your state, some of them may look a little different in your state, which is why we recommend you talk to our outreach team, because they are trained to not only know what's available in your state, but to also have the conversation about which plan works best with your goals, your companies, your sales style, and your clients. So there's a lot that goes into choosing a company other than just like this one. Something else I'll mention, we're going to recommend these 3 carriers. Please note, when it comes to shopping cancer insurance, pick a carrier. Pick one company. Your clients are not shopping carriers, they are shopping benefits. So with all these, you can adjust, you can change, you can manipulate all the plans to make sure that fits their lifestyle and their wallet, but you don't need to compare to them a GTL, a Mutual of Omaha, and an Aetna. So we'll go ahead and really briefly go into why we pick or why we tend to favor each one of these plans. GTL, it's beautiful. GTL is the king, in my opinion, of ancillary benefits. So one contract gets you their short-term care, home health care, Medicare supplement, cancer insurance, and final expense even. They're just kind of a one-stop shop for ancillary products. Couple things, they only have a 5-year look back. Most cancer insurance policies will have a 10-year look back. So somebody who is diagnosed within, 5 years cannot get this plan. 6 years, they can, as long as they've been in remission for over 5 years. They have a genetic testing, which is very interesting, which means that somebody can go ahead and take a test to see how likely they are based on their genetic makeup to get diagnosed with cancer. Or if they do get diagnosed with cancer, it's an extra step to see what other types of cancers is it likely to spread to, which is very interesting. They do have a benefit that does include skin cancer. Most insurance companies will say if you get diagnosed with melanoma, then sorry, they don't count that as cancer, which is very disheartening to hear for a client whenever they have a cancer plan. They think they're going to use it and it doesn't count because it's not the right cancer. GTL, again, they will pay out on certain skin cancers. They have a 24/7 nurse hotline through the Mayo Clinic, which is really nice. It's nice to say, if you get diagnosed with cancer, you wake up at 2 a.m. and something's wrong, you don't have to rush to the emergency room. Right. Call the Mayo Clinic. You have a nurse hotline that's free to you with the GTL policy. Give them a call and have that conversation versus having to pay in a really expensive co-pay to go into the emergency room. So I really like GTL. And Michael, to answer your question, GTL does pay full benefits on in situ cancer. In situ cancer means that it's cancer cells that are localized and not likely to spread. So an individual who gets cancer, they aren't going to be as concerned with getting things like chemotherapy, some radiation, not always, but they're not so worried about the spread of cancer. Most insurance companies will say, well, we're not going to pay on that either. It's not the right type of cancer. Both GTL and Aetna do pay on in situ style cancer. So I told you we'd get to your question, and I delivered. Mutual of Omaha. Nothing much to say about Mutual of Omaha. They are the lowest cost plan. They're the cheapest, and they have the Mutual of Omaha branding.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's really big.
So they work pretty traditional. They have a 10-year look back period. They're a pretty standard cancer plan. All of these are going to be lump sum options. Equitable is the only one that we have as a pay per service. These are all going to be lump sum, but really hard to beat a low premium, really hard to beat that Mutual of Omaha branding. Last but not least is Aetna. Aetna is another company that just kind of sings the praises of the ancillary market. Your Aetna contract, which you have for your Medicare supplements, was also going to give you a contract for, you guessed it, home health care, final expense, cancer insurance, and other types of products like that. So one contract gets you kind of the whole suite of their products. They also have a 5-year look back. The one thing I love about Aetna is that they go all the way up to age 89. Other carriers like GTL and Mutual, they typically end at 75 or 79. They'll go all the way up to age 89, which is very, very, very unique. Again, they cover the in situ cancer 100%, and they have a wonderful reoccurrence benefit, a reoccurrence rider that an individual can purchase They do have a built-in benefit as well, but they have a really nice rider for that. These are the 3 companies we recommend. There are more: Cigna, Equitable. There are other carriers that have those. These are just the ones that Senior Marketing Specialist fancies, just because of what I just mentioned there. Yes. All right, guys. Favorite part of today's benefit. Oh, and Michael said Mutual of Omaha does not pay for incentive. Michael, I don't believe so. Don't take my word for it. Talk to our outreach team. I do and have that conversation with them. I'm almost positive they don't, though. But don't take that as the answer. Talk to them. They'll be able to do the research on it. Any other questions, comments, concerns, threats, or promises, guys? Again, this is a product that is near and dear to my heart. Like I mentioned, I am my child is the product of somebody who had a cancer insurance policy. So I've seen firsthand exactly the difference that it can make. But hopefully we've allowed everybody or had a conversation with everybody so they feel more comfortable talking about and mentioning cancer insurance. Because if you mention it, they will buy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anything, we hope that you just take away with the confidence that it doesn't matter how you bring it up, you just need to bring it up. It can be a little messy, it can be a little clumsy, but that's going to be less awkward than that conversation like Dan had with this client where there was nothing he could do. Yeah. So just bring it up. That's what's important here.
I think it's also you should never rely on your client to ask about it.
For sure.
Because they don't know to ask about it.
Exactly.
I mean, it's very surprising to a lot of professionals we talk about that cancer makes up, as the number 1 cause for medical bankruptcy. 60 to 70% of costs are non-associated with medical needs. It's very, very, those are jarring statistics, and we do this for a living. We look at these stats all the time, and it's hard for us to digest that information. Your clients aren't going to ask about it because they don't know to ask about it. If they do ask about it, it's because it's too late. It's because they're either getting testing because some tests came up inconclusive, tests came up wrong. If they're asking about it, it's because it's too late for them.
Yeah.
Great question from Adam talking about a critical illness policy. So yes, critical illness, cancer insurance is a type of critical illness. Typically, you can also purchase cancer insurance plans that are lumped into cancer, heart attack, and stroke. Those are great policies. Just something to keep in mind with cancer, heart attack, and stroke plans is that they get paid out on a benefit depending on the diagnosis. So if you're talking to an individual and they're really nervous about cancer, but they end up having a heart attack, then they use 100% of that benefit towards that heart attack. They no longer have that benefit available to them for cancer. So if you're talking to somebody that's like, I'm not that worried about cancer, it would be nice to have some extra protection though. That might be a great policy to kind of wrap in those 3 situations into one policy. But again, once it's gone, it's gone. Compared to like a cancer insurance policy, which you only can use that benefit if you're diagnosed with cancer. Yeah. I'm not saying one's better than the other. It's just making sure your clients are educated on how to use that policy. And we do offer different companies for that. Again, talk to our outreach team. They are very well versed on true critical illness, again, cancer, heart attack, stroke plans, what's available in your area. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Brian, appreciate the colorful commentary as always. Awesome, guys. Well, again, if you do have questions or you're just chomping at the bit to talk to our team, call that number. Every time you call us, you get a live human being who will, you just tell them your woes, tell them your problem. They'll get you to the right person. We don't like that machine triage stuff because who wants to talk to a machine?
No one.
No. So make sure you call us. If you want more training on cancer insurance, go to sms-university.com or go to smsteam.net, click on training, takes you to the same place. Go to the products tab, click on the training tab there. We have 5 tips to help you sell cancer insurance. We have overviews of the different products that we recommend, a lot of great extras on the SMS University to help you with selling cancer insurance. Wonderful. All right, guys. Well, we certainly appreciate you guys hanging out with us today. And if you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. Again, my name is Olivia Richardson.
And I'm Sadie Frazier.
Awesome. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.